Hi everybody, this is Agnes from No Sediment, and today I'm going to put my taste buds to the test by trying to identify in a blind tasting different grape varieties of Chateauneuf-du-Pape wines. Chateauneuf-du-Pape is one of the best known and sought after red wines from Southern Rhone. Most Chateauneuf-du-Pape wines are blends of several grapes. In fact, 13 different grapes are officially allowed in it. And if you think of Grenache Blanc and Grenache Gris as separate grape varieties as I do, then there are even more. All of these grape varieties are great on their own, but in Chateauneuf-du-Pape they are blended to create an age-worthy wine. Today I have decided to have an interesting blind tasting. We are going to have a Chateauneuf-du-Pape wine, which is essentially a blend of different grape varieties. We will also add wines that are either made from 100% specific grape commonly used in Chateauneuf-du-Pape, or at least a blend that allows a grape to shine. So we will blind taste Chateauneuf-du-Pape, Shiraz, Grenache, Mourvedre and Cinsault. Let's see whether I can identify these wines, specific grapes, and how they perform in the blend and single varietal wines. So let's start the blind tasting. These wines were poured by my cameraman and I don't know which one is which. Unless you are looking for an unexpected adventure, it is wise in the blind tasting to spit your wines out. And here I have my trustworthy Guns N' Roses spittoon. So wine number one. When it comes to color, it seems quite young, a lot of violet and purple notes, and nose is quite savory. It does show some ripe red berries, not tart, more like strawberries, raspberries, but it also shows some meaty characters. Very firm tannins, slightly elevated, mouth coating, not polished, not aggressive, in a kind of backbony way. They are adding a backbone to this wine. It is not very juicy or fruit-driven wine. It is more savory and it is more structured type of wine. Because of the savory fruit characters and tannin structure, I would think that this is Mourvedre dominated wine. So let's try wine number two. On the appearance, this one seems much lighter. It kind of gives a hint, maybe Grenache. On the nose, this wine, at first I felt maybe a bit of peppery notes, like black pepper, green pepper, but then again when I came back to it, it showed some smoke, meat, or cigar box almost. On the palate, it doesn't have too high acidity, but it has quite firm tannin structure, which I also not necessarily associate with Grenache, which I said at the beginning. Savory, meaty, smoky wine. Not a lot of fruit aromas coming in front. Let's just for a second think that it is Cinsault. I will come back to it. It's actually turning out a bit harder than I was expecting. So wine number three. Quite developed on the color. You have some garnet notes, some brick hints already. It is very ripe on the nose, like you have all these fruit flavors. You have berries, red and black, and maybe some blueberries, but they are very ripe. Some are maybe dried, but then again, it also has some savory fruit characters or resolved type of fruits. I have a guess in my mind, but let's taste it before. Lovely chalky tannin structure, maybe a bit more than I would be expecting from this type of wine. And when I say this type of wine, I think that this is Chateauneuf-du-Pape. When you take this first sip of the wine, you have some sweetness at the very beginning, but then it kind of evaporates and leaves very fresh, quite lovely aftertaste. I feel like I'm being trapped. It's becoming more and more difficult. I was really thinking it will be easier. Let's try wine number four. Okay, so this is quite, I don't want to say cooked aroma, but this is, yeah, it shows a lot of, again, these blueberry flavors, blackberry flavors, and cherries, but they are dried and there are some caramelization on the nose. Let's taste it. It's not like the lightest wine you have on the palate, but it is quite light. So the tannin is there, but it's more playful and definitely not like harsh or aggressive. It's very fine. It doesn't have like the highest acidity, but it is still very juicy. But I'm not sure I'm a fan of that kind of cooked or burned type of aroma characteristics. I would say maybe this is Priorat. Priorat can have very dense, intense wines. And why Grenache? Because it is not very deep in the color. This might be the entry-level style. Wine number 5. Okay, this is Blueberry Crumble. Very lovely wine. Some hints of vanilla as well, and maybe some toast. Quite expressive nose. This is also the deepest colored wine we have in the list. The color is actually ruby. By the color alone, I would guess right away it's maybe Syrah or Shiraz in this case. Let's taste. It shows quite firm body and elevated but ripe, well-matured type of tannins. Finely grained, definitely. All these black and blue fruits are also mirrored on the palate, which I quite enjoy. I did one blind tasting on Chardonnay and I said that for me, New World or Australia and New Zealand specifically have very pure, precise type of fruit in wines in the glass, and this one has that. Like all these wines that I tasted before, they had some savoriness to it, which kind of brought me to Europe. So I would say this is quite typical Barossa style Shiraz. This is one wine that I'm pretty sure about. So let's reveal the wines. First one I thought was quite savory and well structured, especially on the palate with the tannins. I really enjoyed it. And I do think it is, it is opening up. It shows more black and blue fruit flavors now. Very beautiful, it's opening up. I do enjoy it, but I think it is very young. And I would definitely maybe wish this wine to have some more age. I am not necessarily the biggest fan of Robert Parker. He's a very influential person, but I'm not sure I quite can relate with the 100-point scale. So I will rate the wines that we have here, and maybe in the future the blind tastings, I will rate them in a 10-point scale. This is how I rate the wines when I do blind tastings or wine assessments. So I would give this wine 8, definitely beautiful wine. And I think it is Mourvedre dominant. So let's reveal. It is actually from a very well-respected producer in Bandol. I actually really like one quote that was said in the Andrew Jeffords book, Drinking with Walkiers. He said, "Pure Mourvedre is beautiful, but it always tastes better with other grapes." This one has some other grapes in it. A beautiful wine, definitely needs some age. 2020, as I said, quite young vintage. So wine number 2, I said it shows some age, and even though it didn't have too high acidity, it was quite structured when it came to tannins. So this is what brought me to Cinsault. So let's reveal. And if you would ask me about the points, I would say that this is 7.25 maybe. Oh. So this is actually not De Martino, this is Grenache from Priorat and 2018 vintage. I said it was quite developed. So that's actually an error from my part. I actually did enjoy this quite a lot. So one mistake by my side. But when I was tasting, did I say at some point that I was maybe considering Grenache? So wine number 3, that was my favorite wine from all the 5 wines here. I did enjoy this wine a lot. I would give it maybe 9 points. I said it was Chateauneuf-du-Pape, and to be completely honest, if I would have known for sure that it is Chateauneuf-du-Pape, like if it would not be a blind tasting, I would probably give it more, because it had such a burgundy character. It had the lightness, it had like lift and very beautiful acidity that kind of refreshed the palate. I mean, Chateauneuf-du-Pape wines usually have elevated alcohol, but this one was so well integrated. It was quite beautiful. It is actually coming from one of the very well-respected producers in the area, Claude de Pape, and I think it could only become better with age. I like this wine a lot. wine number 4, and now I know which wine it is because I did mix it with my Grenache, which was wine number 2. I will say that this wine is 6.8. De Martino Viejas Tinajas y Tata from Chile, Cinsault 2015. So I am a bit surprised to have that kind of burnt fruity characters, or caramelized fruity characters, if you will. I'm sorry. I don't want to like trash Cinsault, but yeah. All right, and the last wine, which I was quite certain of. It should be Shiraz, and it is the only one left. I actually think this wine is a very well made, quite typical representation of what Australian or Barossa Syrah or Shiraz can be. So I think 7.6 or 7.8. So let's reveal. Ooh, what will it be? So it is Penfolds Bin 28 Kalimna Shiraz. It used to be pure Barossa. It says South Australia, and 2018, quite young vintage for this type of Shiraz for sure. Penfolds is a producer that rarely I am disappointed by. So here you go, we have done another great blind tasting. There's one note for myself. I need to retaste the Grenache or single varietal Grenache wines a bit more because I did not pick it up. You saw that my favorite wine amongst these wines were Chateauneuf-du-Pape, but it kind of makes sense because it was also the most expensive one and probably the most premium out of all these 5 wines. But I actually quite a lot enjoyed the pure Grenache wine from Priorat in Spain. Anyway, Mourvedre was beautiful. I know I will finish that wine someday. I have CORAVIN, but tonight I will stick with Chateauneuf-du-Pape. It was lovely. So this video was all about Chateauneuf-du-Pape and its grapes. If you want to know more about this region, make sure to click here.